Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sarah Spinks.
Hi everyone, today's topic is a big one, behaviour in schools.
That's right, Sam. We're sort of diving into the findings from the recent report, Tackling the Behaviour Challenge in England Schools, which has been published by the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And the numbers are concerning, but there is also hope for improvement.
Okay, so, let's dig deep. Behaviour issues are something that affect not only teachers and pupils, but the entire school environment, and it's a complex issue. But this report highlights some actionable steps that we can take.
Yeah, so let's start, I think, by laying out the problem, Sam. Maybe, Sam, you could give us an overview of what the report found?
Yeah, sure. So the report makes it clear that behaviour and safety in schools reaching a real crisis point. 1 in 4 secondary pupils reported being bullied in the past year, and a third of teachers experienced physical violence from pupils. On top of that, a fifth of teaching time is lost to disruption.
I think those numbers are really shocking, and it's not just the pupils who are affected, is it?
No, as I've said, it's affecting teachers too. A third of teachers leave the profession within 5 years. And behaviour is consistently listed as one of the top reasons. Teachers who feel unsupported in dealing with disruptive behaviour are twice as likely to consider leaving.
That is a real retention crisis, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was only reading a report about a particular school in the north of England who'd spent £600,000 on supply budget in the last year due to the issues around teacher retention. But let's talk about the pupils. How does poor behaviour affect their learning, do you think?
Well, the report estimates that time lost to disruption could reduce the UK's GDP by as much as 1.5% in the long term. So schools that struggle with behaviour perform worse on measures like GCSE results. And let's not forget the emotional toll. Feeling unsafe at school impacts attendance and aspirations for future study.
Absolutely. I think that brings me to my next point, really. Pupils themselves say safety is a key part of a good school experience. If they don't feel safe, their attendance drops. It's quite simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And persistent absence is twice as high as it was in 2018. Around 1.4 million pupils are missing at least 10% of school sessions, and 142,000 are missing more than half.
So, clearly, there's an urgent need for action. So what does the report recommend to tackle this?
Well, there are 2 main interventions suggested. First, schools need more power to engage with parents and external agencies when a pupil's behaviour becomes disruptive. The report suggests that schools should be able to compel families to meet and agree on an action plan. And if parents refuse to cooperate, schools should be able to escalate the issue to safeguarding agencies.
I can see where they're coming from with that. It makes a form of sense. I've heard teachers talk about feeling powerless, when parents don't back them up, and that's a growing concern, I think often fueled by social media as well.
It absolutely is. Although I'm just going to say, as we talk about a lot in these podcasts, escalating to safeguarding agencies, but safeguarding agencies, we need to determine what that means, and what the expectations of those agencies would be.
Absolutely.
Because having been, like you, Sometimes parental engagement is incredibly difficult to get that to be constructive. I'm not convinced that safeguarding agencies, unless they have some powers, they'll face many of the same issues that schools do. But anyway, that was the first suggested intervention. The second intervention is a national behaviour challenge, sort of modelled on successful programmes like the London Challenge. And it would provide data-driven insights and peer-led support for schools struggling with behaviour.
And I think if we think about that, it needs to be not about shaming schools, but supporting them, and it has to be a truly supportive process.
Yeah, absolutely. So the report highlights that behaviour isn't just about silent corridors or strict policies. What really matters is clear expectations, consistent communication, and fair enforcement.
Okay, so let's sort of dig a little bit more into that. There seems to be a perception that behaviour problems come from poor management. Do you think that's accurate?
Well, to some extent, yes. The report from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change shows that many schools lack clear behaviour policies, or those policies aren't consistently enforced. Only 8% of teachers say their behaviour policies are always followed.
And I know that from my many years within school, that inconsistency leads to frustration for both pupils and staff. If you don't know what you're doing consistently, then it leads to frustration and confusion, doesn't it?
Exactly. And if you stop and think about it from a safeguarding perspective, the one thing that we do know, when children are experiencing trauma or things are going wrong in their life, often school is the one place that provides that stability. And the reason it provides that stability is because the expectations are clear. There are boundaries. They know where their support can come from. And I think it's about possibly mirroring that from a safeguarding concern perspective into how we encourage and manage behaviour.
Yeah.
I mean, teachers need to feel supported and pupils need clear boundaries. The report also points out that a lot of disruptive behaviour has roots outside the classroom, sort of more contextual things, family issues, mental health struggles, social problems.
Yeah, I think, which means schools can't sort of just tackle it alone, can they? It's not just something that goes on in school, it's far wider than that. Yeah. It's
precisely. And again, I would mirror that to safeguarding practice. Where we are in our safeguarding practice, looking at contextual safeguarding, all those things outside that can impact.
Absolutely.
So also the report does call for better multi-agency collaboration with schools, given more, I hate the use of power, but it is enabling them to convene and lead those discussions.
I mean, it's just everything that we talk about, Sam, often comes down to that better multi-agency collaboration, doesn't it? That joined up approach. And it sounds like there needs to be a reset maybe in the relationship between schools and parents and external agencies. That seems to be pervasive through lots of discussions we have.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to the discussion that we had about how to make multi-agency working and actually working in multi-agency teams. And for listeners, if you've not listened to that podcast, do give it a listen. We do discuss that in detail. I think one of the key takeaways is that improving behaviour isn't just about discipline. It's about creating a safe, stable environment where both pupils and teachers can thrive.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Before we wrap up, what do you think is the biggest message educators should take from this report?
I'd say the biggest message is that behaviour is not just an educational issue, it's a foundational one. So without addressing behaviour, we can't improve learning outcomes, teacher retention, or even the well-being of pupils. So this needs to be a top priority.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Thanks so much, Sam. For me, it's been a really insightful discussion. And if listeners want to read the full report, it is available from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And I think it's definitely worth a read to have a think around what experts, I hate to use that word, are thinking about in terms of behaviour.